You probably know the story of the Odyssey, right? The hero, Odysseus, spends a decade battling monsters, outsmarting gods, all to get back home. But what if the real tragedy of this epic story isn't about the hero at all? What if it's about the people he left behind? That's exactly what we're digging into today.
Okay, this line right here, it's one of the most brutal and honestly most ignored lines in all of Western literature. It's describing the execution of 12 of Queen Penelope's maids who were hanged on Odysseus's command when he finally got home. It's quick, it's cold, and in the story it's presented as just a footnote, a necessary evil in the hero's triumphant return. But is that all there is to it? To figure that out, we're going to put two very different accounts head-to-head. On one side, you've got the official story, the ancient epic we all know and love. And on the other, a modern retelling, a counter-narrative that asks a really provocative question. What if the victims finally got to tell their side of the story?
First things first, let's look at the version Homer gave us. For thousands of years, this has been the official account of what went down in Ithaca. This is the story that's been told and retold like it's historical fact.
So, in Homer's telling, Penelope is the model of a perfect waiting wife. The text is always calling her discreet and prudent. She's really defined by the men in her life, her noble dad, her hero husband. Her whole world is just sorrow and grief, and her main job is to hold down the fort until Odysseus gets back. She's the picture of virtue, sure, but she's also fundamentally passive.
And what about the maids? Well, in Homer's version, they're not even really characters. They're just this nameless group condemned for sleeping with Penelope's suitors. They're called paras, which literally translates to bitches or dogs, and their execution is framed as just, a necessary cleansing of the house. Justice is served, the old order is restored. End of story, right? Well, maybe not.
So now, let's fast forward a couple of thousand years. The author Margaret Atwood completely reimagines this story by handing the microphone directly to Penelope, who's telling her side of the story from the underworld. And let me tell you, her version is not what you'd expect.
Yeah, this is not the weeping, passive queen from the epic. Atwood's Penelope is sharp, she's funny, and she is deeply cynical about all the stories that men tell. She's haunted by the rumors that have followed her through history, and she's here to set the record straight. We learn about her traumatic childhood, her very complicated marriage. She's not an archetype anymore. She's a witty, calculating, complex woman who's finally in control of her own story.
But Penelope isn't the only one who gets to speak in this retelling. The real heart of this new story, the part that will really stick with you, belongs to those 12 women who were so brutally silenced.
12. Atwood makes us really focus on that number. 12 young women. 12 lives. They're not a footnote this time. They're a chorus, and they've been waiting a long, long time to be heard.
What Atwood creates here is a perfect example of a counter-narrative. She's taking a story that has always been dominated by powerful men and just flips the script, giving the microphone to the people who were pushed to the margins. It's an incredible literary tool for questioning official histories and showing us the stories that were deliberately erased.
So how does she do it? Well, first, she gives the maids a collective voice. They actually interrupt Penelope's story, acting like a Greek chorus, singing and chanting their own version of events. Second, they get a backstory. We learn they were slaves born into poverty who basically did what they had to do to survive. And third, and this is the absolute game changer, they were given a secret mission.
It turns out their so-called disloyalty was a complete lie. In Atwood's version, Penelope herself ordered the maids to get close to the suitors. They were her spies, her eyes and ears, gathering intelligence for her. Their betrayal was actually an act of incredible loyalty to their queen, a secret that tragically they took to their graves.
So, when you put these two stories right next to each other, what do you really see? It's a powerful, powerful lesson in how perspective can change absolutely everything.
This table just breaks it all down perfectly. Homer's third-person narrator creates this distance, right? But Atwood's first-person voice, it brings you right in, it's intimate. Homer gives us the perfect, virtuous archetype. Atwood gives us a complex, messy human woman. And the maids, wow, the difference is just staggering. In Homer, they're nameless sinners whose deaths are about restoring order. In Atwood, they are victims and witnesses, and their deaths are a profound, terrible injustice.
So at the end of the day, the point isn't really to decide which version is the real one. The real takeaway here is about recognizing the immense power of the storyteller. You know that saying, history is written by the victors? Well, literature, especially retellings like this, gives us a chance to hear it from everybody else.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you think about all the great stories, all the histories that you've learned, the question Atwood leaves us with is a really powerful one. Whose voice is still missing? Whose story have we still not heard?